Hi, everybody. Thank you. We're glad you're here. Thanks for taking the time to watch this podcast. We appreciate it. We're here with the movers and shakers of the real estate appraisal industry. And today we've got Tony Pistilli with us. Tony, how are you today?
Well, Tim, and thank you for inviting me.
It's an honor. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate it. Now, let's get the important stuff out of the way. Number one, you are still the chair of the Colorado Real Estate Board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You're a USPAP instructor, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so between the two of us, we can confuse anybody about USPAP. You're a state certified residential real estate appraiser. You started out at HUD, and currently you're the general manager of evaluations at restb.ai out of Barcelona, Spain. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and restb, R-E-S-T-B, stands for Restful Barcelona. And
Right.
I've never had the honor of visiting Barcelona, but I'm going to assume it's restful. So thank you. Tony, I wanted to establish your bona fides before we got into the question, so everybody knew where you were coming from. Now, I'm not going to ask you how long you've been in a real estate appraisal, but chances are when you started, you used a typewriter, right?
Actually, Tim, I have to confess, it was before typewriters. We did it with pencil, believe it or not, on carbon paper. If there's anyone old enough to remember that,
To know what
and
carbon paper is.
it was totally acceptable to use whiteout on the appraisals and Polaroid film. And when you're done, you tear one page off and you keep it as your work file, and the rest of it goes to HUD.
Okay, so we've been doing this a long time, probably longer than we want to think about. All right,
Exactly.
Tony, you had an article recently in Appraisal Buzz magazine, and it was called "The Next Generation of Appraisals: Revolutionizing Real Estate Valuation with Computer Vision." And in that article, you wrote on the improved accuracy that appraisers can achieve through AI. You wrote about efficient property inspections, data-driven valuation, enhanced investor confidence, and challenges and future directions of real estate appraisal. Now, Tony, if you would elaborate on those topics for us. For example, let's go with improved accuracy. Now, a lot of appraisers are saying, hey, an appraisal cannot be accurate unless I go stand in the living room and sniff and look around and take pictures and touch the walls and open the refrigerator and flush the toilets and check to see if the screen door works and pet the dog, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yet we're rapidly getting to the point where, with rare exceptions, that's not really necessary, is it?
You know, Tim, I don't believe so. I know there's still a large group of appraisers that would disagree with us, but I don't think our highest and best use is inspecting the properties. I think it's the analyzing of the data, interpreting the results of the inspection or the observation of that inspection, and really identifying appropriate adjustments, appropriate comparables, and using the technology to our advantage and not being afraid of allowing or even embracing that to come into our profession.
So in continuing with this, Tony, let's face it, most appraisers are pale, male, and stale. And they've been doing it for, I'm glad you like that one. And they've been doing it for a long time. And that's how we were trained. I mean, you picked up your pencil, you picked up your legal pad, you picked up the camera, you picked up the tape measure, you drove over to the house, whether it was raining, snowing, or there was a zombie attack, you slapped the tape upside the house to measure it. Then you went in and took all sorts of pictures, and you drew the sketch of the house freehand. And then you went back to the office and you got the graph paper, and you used a ruler and you redrew it so that you could copy it and put it into the appraisal report. Now, what you're saying is that's not our highest and best use. Our highest and best use is engaging in the analytics of appraising, not the mechanics of appraising. Is that the point you're trying to make?
Absolutely. And Tim, to give appraisers confidence that the information they're receiving from others, third parties, there's technology that can measure as accurate, or I would argue even more accurately and consistently than we do as appraisers, that draw architect quality floor plans for us to review, just like new construction. We rely on a lot of third parties when we do appraisals today, like plans and specifications, surveys, other things from architects, surveyors, real estate agents. Allowing someone else to do the inspection, observing the results, and incorporating that into your appraisal is really, to me, it's the most efficient way to use our time. And we get paid the most by doing those things that others can't.
So, okay. Now, an appraiser comes to you and says, Tony, I like slapping the tape upside a house. I just feel more comfortable that way. And I don't mind my pants getting all scratched up, and I don't mind my shoes getting all scuffed up, and I don't mind the occasional hornet attack. I just like slapping the tape upside the house. So other than that, I think we both agree that is not the appraiser's highest and best use. Is there anything wrong with that?
Not at all. And actually, Tim, with the advent of the bifurcated appraisal process that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have already rolled out, there's a role for appraisers to be the data collectors, to be slapping the tape or doing the computer generated floor plans, and being that inspector or data collector. That's totally acceptable for appraisers to do that. It's also totally acceptable to do the entire process yourself. But to me, it's a little bit like doing math on paper rather than using a calculator. All this technology, when used appropriately, can really make an appraiser more efficient.
So we're not talking about getting away from basics. We're not talking about getting away from the human factor. We're just talking about making the human factor more efficient, right?
I agree. Yeah, totally.
All right. Let me talk about one of those other topics you talked about was enhance investor confidence. Now, first of all, what does that mean? And then I've got a follow-up question.
So many times in my career, Tim, as a chief appraiser, and I think a lot of chief appraisers will understand this, we only see or oftentimes see just the bad appraisals, the ones that escalate to the point where someone with more experience has to look at them. And what we find when we open up these, quote unquote, bad or escalated appraisals, a lot of times are missed adjustments or misclassifications of condition, quality, appropriate use of comparables. With technology, we can provide guardrails and really almost like source of truth kind of information around condition of the subject, quality of the comparables, condition of the comparables, and whether or not there's an appropriate or necessary adjustment to be made, or sometimes more appropriately or importantly, when they haven't been made. And that oftentimes leads to overvaluation or undervaluation. And the agencies are very anxious about identifying those.
So from a standpoint of enhanced investor confidence, what you're saying is the GSEs and ultimately Wall Street are a whole lot, what term to use, a whole lot happier when it takes them 5 minutes to look at an appraisal and agree with it than when they have to involve 2 or 3 people and maybe take 2 days to go, well, okay, it's okay, we'll go ahead. So that's what you mean by enhanced investor confidence. You're talking about the GSEs and ultimately Wall Street, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Let's continuing on with the concept of AI. Why the interest, not only your interest, but other appraisers. Why the interest in AI, artificial intelligence, as part of residential real estate appraisal? I mean, this is something that traditionally humans have done. And you look at the property and you say, oh, look, the property is at 1234 Elm Street. And you write down in your report, oh, the property is at 1234 Elm Street. So, I mean, what, other than, we still have to type it, or somebody still has to type it into the report. So how is AI going to benefit us in that particular sense? How is that going to save us time and money?
Tim, I would actually disagree that I don't know in the near future if appraisers really have to type everything on a form anymore. If we have a photo, computer vision makes it possible to identify the architectural style, the number of stories, the quality, condition, the room features, room types, and actually pre-populate the form so that the appraiser reviews rather than actually does the typing. Similar to when you go to the dentist, the hygienist spends, 30 minutes in your mouth cleaning your teeth. Dentist comes in and reviews what the hygienist did and approves it. And, who do you think gets paid more in that process?
Yeah, the dentist, obviously.
Yeah.
All right. So what you're saying is if there's an app that helps you go in and takes detailed, high resolution, high pixel count photographs of the property, then technically what you're saying that is AI has the capacity to take a look at that photograph or those photographs and then describe the house's architectural style, its quality, its condition, the number of bedrooms, the floor coverings, so on and so forth. So neither the appraiser nor the virtual assistant in the Philippines has to do that. AI is going to do it, right?
That's correct.
And then the appraiser. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're going to have confidence. And back to your question about investor confidence, when that data is identified through computer vision, there's a source of truth. Computer vision eliminates human error and it provides consistent, reliable results. So when we see a fireplace in the picture, you can be 100% or 99% confident that computer vision is going to see that fireplace, where maybe an appraiser forgets about it. And if it's pre-populated into your form, that helps you understand or learn or remember that, hey, there was a fireplace in that house.
So the AI does all this stuff, and then the computer sits down, then the appraiser sits down with it and goes over it as the dentist reviewed the hygienist work. The appraiser sits down with it, goes over it and goes, okay, I'll buy that. Let's move on to step 2. So that is a potential. So in other words, instead of maybe doing 2 of those a day on a good day when there aren't any other problems, because the appraiser is taking advantage of AI, the appraiser could do that 6 times a day. Is that within the realm of possibility?
Absolutely. And what I've seen working at AMC's, Tim, initially, the fee paid to the appraiser for a bifurcated appraisal is very similar to one that they do 100% of the work. But imagine not making an appointment, not inspecting the house, not measuring the house, not driving the comparables, not driving back to your house, never leaving your house, just like a co-pilot or pilot of an airplane, sitting in front of the computer and adjusting all the knobs and dials and understanding the data that's being input to you and creating that appraisal.
Yeah, you don't want the pilot of the plane leaving during the flight. It's best if they stay there. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Now, we have spoken about some advantages of AI, but yet there are a whole lot of appraisers out there who, when you say AI, they want to get their pitchforks and their torches and they want to storm the castle and kill the monster. Why do you feel that is such a, and I'm not saying all appraisers are that way, but why do you feel that is such a prevalent condition?
Nature, and I'll put myself in that group. I don't like change and I'm slow to adopt new technology. I was one of the people that said, email, why do we need that when we have fax machines? And yeah, I was wrong. But I think we can learn from history too. Those that don't adopt new technology or adapt to new things become obsolete. Imagine being a travel agent. Their role in arranging travel for people has diminished greatly. Or the car mechanic that, the old image that we had of grease monkeys that got in and worked on mechanical cars that never learned the technology or the computer portions of an automobile today. You open the hood of a car today, and to me, it's like totally different, right? But I never adapted. I never continued to learn about new technology. I could change oil on my cars when I was going to college. I don't even know where to put oil in today. It's a very highly technical, very well-paid position today. But those are people that continued to learn their craft and refine it to meet the needs of today. And I think appraisers have to heed that warning from the past, from some of those other occupations, that just never really adopted and kept it up to date.
Okay. All right. Tony, we're in a landscape, for lack of a better word, in which appraisers are being held under microscopes under which they've never been held before. And I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit, and you do not have to share my opinion. But appraisers are being exposed to scrutiny to which they should not be exposed. Now, given that that is a fact of life, and that level of scrutiny is not going to go away, and that level of scrutiny is more than likely going to require appraisers to up their educational games, up their professional games, up their ethical games. What do you think that the demand for appraisers will be in, well, let's project it in the future, 1, 3, and 5 years?
In the short term, Tim, I don't think there's going to be much change in the demand for appraisers and appraisals. But longer term, I see the lending industry broadly and being driven by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac moving to a more risk-focused approach to collateral. Meaning, if we have a 3-bedroom Rambler and let's say the value is $300,000, but the homeowner is borrowing $100,000. There's no reason in my mind, and I think it's shared by the agencies, that we need a $600 appraisal that's going to take 2 weeks to get done. There's enough, with the good credit score, good payment history, low loan to value. There's very little risk in that transaction. Therefore, maybe the level of collateral valuation isn't of the need of a full appraisal. Probably something less. And that's where we get into the waivers, inspections, the hybrid desktop appraisals. And I think we're going to see more on the data side or end of the spectrum than we are the full appraisal end of the spectrum. So going out 3 years, 5 years, maybe only the most difficult or the ones that need the most intense analysis and understanding will be done by appraisers, and maybe the easy ones, more technology driven and less appraiser involvement.
Okay, let me follow up on that, please. Okay, 5 years down the road, only the quote unquote hard ones are going to be the ones the appraisers actually, that's where they go, and they slap the tape upside the house, and they pet the dog, and they check the refrigerator. I mean, you're talking a 25,000 square foot house on a 500-acre ranch off the grid in Montana someplace. Okay, that's probably a hard one. All right, so what is an appraiser going to have to do? And I've got a follow-up question to this in a minute. What's an appraiser going to have to do to be able to be qualified in the eyes of the GSEs to go appraise a quote unquote difficult property?
We're going to have to, at first and always, understand USPAP. That's what separates appraisers from anybody else, a non-licensed individual that does evaluations, a broker that does BPOs. USPAP allows for the credible determination of value. And if we don't, as appraisers, know the rules that we need to follow, we're going to become irrelevant. After that, utilizing the technologies that are available and applying the methods and procedures that are necessary to develop credible valuations, taking our time. I do mentoring in Texas for appraisers that unfortunately receive disciplinary actions. And more times than not, Tim, it's because, and the appraisers say, you know, I was just in a hurry. I was doing this late at night. Probably should have slowed down. I think as appraisers, we all know the right thing to do. If we don't, we need to know the right thing to do, but then we have to take time and really apply what we know to that appraisal. And that's going to be more important as the appraisals get more difficult.
Okay. Should appraisers be expanding, leveraging their talents to appraise properties other than cookie cutter houses for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac?
Absolutely. You know, I firmly believe machines, technology, data can do, and this is going to rile up the appraisal industry, but some houses, AVMs can come pretty close to a reliable value today. They've come a long ways in doing that. There was a time when underwriters would determine the credit worthiness of home buyers. Today, there's a credit score, and it's probably available on your phone. I think when we go forward far enough in the evolution of appraisal and mortgage lending, we're going to be able to drive up to an ATM machine. Our irises are going to be scanned. We're going to know instantaneously, perhaps on certain population of houses, what the value is, what the loan to value is, what our credit score is, what our payment history is. And we're going to get money transferred into our account and drive away. It's going to be that easy. I know that sounds futuristic, but I firmly believe that as all of these technologies progress, there's going to be an intersection where this works for a certain percentage or a portion of the loans that are being done today, and an appraiser will not be involved. Therefore, if you want to stay relevant, to your point, yeah, learn how to do the complex assignments, learn the value of views, learn the value of different architectural styles and materials, and really understand how to appropriately use the methodologies and procedures to provide a credible opinion of value.
Okay, let me stop a second here. Let's go back to the concept of the difficult ones. If an appraiser wants to be able to do that, and let's face it, those are the ones that are going to pay well. If an appraiser wants to be able to do that, should the appraiser be seriously considering an advanced real estate appraisal designation?
Well, that's a tough one. I think appraisers, like everyone else, should be continuous learners. Appraisers should always be looking at improving their profession or their craft or their ability to do the work that they do. Earl Nightingale once said that if we just spend an hour a day doing something additional, learning something new, within, I can't remember, like 2 or 3 years, we become an expert in our field. Within 5 years, we become an expert in the country. And it's really small, incremental, ongoing improvements to ourselves and our ability to perform appraisals that will keep us relevant.
All right. Now, speaking of relevant, all right, you attend a lot of conferences. It's probably the bane of your existence, and you're always on an airplane somewhere. All right, so you're in a conference and you're sitting there minding your own business, and somebody walks up to you, and a new appraiser walks up to you. In fact, maybe she's not even an appraiser yet. She's just thinking about getting into the business. So this new appraiser walks up to you and says, "Tony, I'm thinking about getting into the business. I'm here at this convention, just checking things out. I know you got your pulse on what's going. You got your finger on the pulse of what's going on. Tell me, should I get into this? Should I get into this residential real estate appraisal business? And if so, what end of it should I get into?" And obviously you can't be specific because we're not dealing with a specific person with a specific question. But given that generality, given that hypothetical situation, what would your advice be?
I would say absolutely. Get into the industry and be the best at that you can be. the people that are the best at what they do, even if it's cutting hair or whatever the profession, there's always going to be a position for them, and they're always going to be in demand, and they'll always get paid at the highest end of the spectrum.
But it's going to take, as you talked about earlier, talking about Earl Nightingale, it's going to take somebody who is willing to go that extra mile, if that isn't too cliche, to get that education, get that training, both practical training and mental training, to be able to take on those difficult assignments rather than just the cookie cutter assignments. And so what you would say to that particular appraiser is, yeah, jump all over it, but be careful. You probably want to jump into the deep end of the pool, because that's where most of the appraisers aren't. And therefore, take some kind of specialty that requires you to be in the deep end of the pool, thus to distinguish yourself from all the good folks paddling around with their rubber duckies in the shallow end of the pool, right?
Tim, I think the days of, I hear the term form filler in a negative way towards appraisers. The form fillers and the cookie cutter appraisals, they may not be here 1 year, 3 year, 5 years from now. And really, if you want to be relevant and stay in the business, you have to do those unique properties that take a level of expertise that the majority of appraisers today don't do on a day-to-day basis. There's also a whole bunch of other things that appraisers can do that we don't really think about. A dentist doesn't just, clean your teeth. If you have a cavity, they fill your teeth. If you need a tooth replaced, they'll replace it. They have 3D photography in dental offices today. That never happened, 20 years ago. There's a lot of other areas where appraisers can be and remain very relevant in litigation, in courtroom, in right-of-way, all sorts of things that we don't typically, the majority of us, think about with residential appraising. We always think of mortgage, a whole bunch of other things and disciplines that we can get into. If you, back to the foundation of knowing USPAP, having the credible methods and procedures and developing credible appraisals, that's fundamentally important.
Okay, Tony, let's get back to fundamentals. I've got 2 more questions.
Sure.
And the first one is, okay, you're sitting at a conference, and you're worried about the plane you got to catch and the next appointment you got tomorrow, and jet lag, and the fact that you might get home in time to throw more clothes into a suitcase to get on the next airplane. And somebody walks up to you and says, Tony, I want to take a class. I want to be a better appraiser. I want to take a class. What class or what seminar or what book or whatever, what would you recommend to that appraiser? Again, the appraiser wants to take one class. What would you recommend to that appraiser, that one class, to take immediately? I mean, within the next 2 weeks, to become a better appraiser?
I think the one thing that helped me personally, Tim, more than anything, and I don't know if you will agree with this, but when I went through becoming an AQB certified USPAP instructor, a lot of the vagaries of USPAP disappeared, and I really understood what USPAP was all about. That would be a very good foundation for every appraiser to have, is that experience of becoming an instructor and really going through the rigor that it takes to not just pass the test, but apply that. Other than that, from a mentor and a peer review committee member in Texas, I see a lot of times appraisers not documenting their adjustments, or just for some reason saying, I think air conditioning is 3,000. That's what I'm seeing in the market. And that's totally not acceptable. And we see that all the time as a disciplinary action. No documentation in your work file and lack of documentation for adjustments. I know you said just one class, but documentation of how to arrive at appropriate adjustments and then documenting those in your work file.
Okay, and you just answered my last question, which was going to be, given your status as somebody who must sit in judgment of appraisers, what was the one area in which you found appraisers most lacking? And given what you just said, it would probably be they're not supporting their adjustments, right?
And not having that support in their work file. And nothing related to USPAP. Appraisers oftentimes make a mistake being hasty. They want to get it done. I know they're probably rushed by the AMC or the client or whomever to get this done. They're answering the phone at the same time they're typing, but can guarantee 100% of the people that we mentor, they wish they could go back and just spend an extra 10, 15 minutes developing more narrative or understanding a more reasonable approach to that adjustment, and more documentation in the work file.
Tony, thank you. If somebody needed to get in touch with you for whatever reason, how would they go about doing that?
Give me a call or send an email, and feel free to put that
Go
in
ahead,
the
go ahead
however
and
you
tell
can
your
communicate.
email address. Go ahead and tell them your
Sure.
email address.
My email is my name, Tony Pistilli at att.net.
Tony, is it Tony.Pistilli or Tony Pistilli?
No, just TONY Pistilli at att.net.
Excellent. Okay. And then we tend not to give out phone numbers. So, all right. So somebody can get in touch with you and put a question to you. Tony, thank you. As we wrap this up, is there anything you'd like to add?
I just really appreciate the opportunity, Tim. I've listened to your podcast for a long time, and it's an honor to be a guest.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be with you. We appreciate it. So, Tony, don't get away. But on Tony's behalf, please let me thank you for listening to this podcast. I appreciate it. If you need to get in touch with me, contact me at tim@theappraisersadvocate.com. It'll be a pleasure to work with you. Thank you. Bye-bye.